We now know that Nahom was a real place, not only because it's mentioned in later Arab documents, but in the 9th, 10th centuries A.D., and that means that we're still 1,500 years later than Lehi and Sariah, but because of contemporary texts that have been discovered in Yemen. Years ago, there was an exhibit of ancient Yemen artifacts that showed in Paris. I saw a notice of this thing in a magazine. So I sent off for the catalog. And the catalog comes, and I find some really interesting photos of altars and other kinds of. Now these are votive altars. They stand about 24, 26 inches high. They're about 18, 20 inches wide and about 15 inches deep. There are some that are interesting because they preserve on them architectural features. For example, you can see a sunken door or a sunken window carved into these little altars. Makes it look like a building with little miniature steps up to the door and so on. I was interested in that because Lehi pays attention to the architecture that he sees in his dream. And I suspect it's because it's different from his own. That everything in South Arabia was on the square. There were square angles to everything. The doorway was square and so on. In Jerusalem, it's a mix between Babylonian, which is coming from the northeast, and Egyptian, which is coming from the southwest. So the architecture has a different flavor from that in South Arabia. I begin to photograph. I have my camera and I've set up so that I get close in on these images that have been published. And along the way, I'm photographing these small altars. And I decide, I should read to see what these guys are saying about this. So I read that this altar was commissioned by this guy, has an Arab name, son of Nawaz, son of Hassan, something like that. The Nahmite, on the occasion of such and such. And it's on that occasion that the altar is made as a gift to a temple that sits down there. And so I read this thing, and the excavator dates it to the 7th, 6th centuries BC. I'm a little slow, but eventually it caught up with me that I'd just read the name Nahom. It's spelled differently, but the consonants are the same, N-H-M. Now in Hebrew, those consonants have something to do with comfort. And that, of course, is something that Ishmael's family seeks as they bury Ishmael. They seek comfort. But in Old South Arabian, these consonants are the root letters which have to do with carved stone, the carving of stone. And so what we have here is an instance of a carved stone block coming from the territory where stonemasons were at work. And this was part of what they did. And the name of their tribe was Nahom, or as Nephi inserts the vowels, Nahom. It's the same word. And this thing is carved about the time that Lehi and Sarai were on the move. So we now have contemporary archaeological evidence that this name, which looks like Joseph Smith reached into the bosom of eternity, plucked it out, dropped it in his narrative, and said, this is the place of Ishmael's burial. We now have archaeological proof from contemporary records. There are 3 altars, all carved by the same, commissioned by the same guy, and they're all given to the same temple. It's the temple of Bar-an, which is in ancient Marib, which is where, by the way, the Queen of Sheba comes from. So here we have archaeological proof, first archaeological proof for the Book of Mormon narrative.